All right. I do believe that is us live once again. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Making Sense of South Africa. I don't know if that's the name of the show. I have no idea. I don't think the show is ever going to have a name because I'm basically going to change my mind on what the name is of the show every single time I do a show because it's going to be whatever the hell I feel like. CR, how you doing? Kimmy, how you doing? Michael, how you doing? DNX Soul, how you guys doing? I chose the name for today's show very specifically because I've been asked this by quite a lot of people wanting to know whether or not they should take up the refugee offer from President Trump in America. People asking me, is it time for me to leave South Africa? Is it just worth it now to get out? So I thought, you know what, let's put a show together where we kind of discuss what are the things that you should consider before you make such a big move, because it is a big move for a lot of people, right? Alsha, how you doing? Als, I'm not entirely sure if I'm saying your name correctly. Boshi, how you doing, sir? So there's a number of things that needs to be discussed and needs to sort of be considered before you make such a decision. Now, for the purposes of this conversation, I'm going to stick to America being the country that most people are going to be going to, right? Amazing. How you doing, sir? And I'm going to talk directly to that. But this is applicable no matter where you go, right? It doesn't matter if you and your family are planning to go to Australia or you and your family are planning to go to the UK or to Europe or to Canada or to South America or to China. I made, by the way, massive shout out to one of the viewers. I genuinely can't remember your name, but if I do see your name, I will probably recognize it. But he bumped into me on the beach here in Cape Town, and it was his wedding day. Like, literally, he was on the beach strolling with his brand new wife. She was still wearing the wedding dress. So I'm assuming they just came from church or from the venue where they got married. And as we were walking, he sort of pointed at me and he was like, wait, I know you. And I'm like, oh, hello. And he's like, you're Stefan. And I'm like, yeah. How you doing, bro? So we ended up having like a half an hour discussion with him telling me about China and how it's gotten insanely expensive to live there. He's been living there for 8 years, so just want to give a massive shout out and congratulations to you and your brand new wife. I truly hope that you guys are going to be super happy. She's from Chile, so very beautiful wife. They look like they're going to be a beautiful family, so, you know, truly, truly awesome. Very nice to meet him. But yeah, you know, it's this, wherever you go in the world, right? And it doesn't matter where you end up. There's a couple of things that you have to understand. And I had this conversation last week with someone that has enrolled in the refugee program, and they had questions. They weren't entirely sure. You know, it's a strange thing, because first and foremost, what you need to remember is once you're gone, right? You can't go to America and then after a year go, well, I want to go visit my family in South Africa. If you're leaving the shores of South Africa, you're doing so because you genuinely or you're afraid of your life. You're afraid of what your life could become. You're afraid of what the government could potentially do to you. So you have to understand that first and foremost. It's done, right? This doesn't apply to people that's just immigrating to Australia or New Zealand or wherever. But then I would say the biggest thing that you need to consider right now, and we're getting to the political stuff, I promise. I'm getting to the political stuff. I'm just sort of laying the groundwork here, and this is true for all immigration. What you need to understand, if you are only running away from something and not towards something, you're going for the wrong reasons. Yes, fear of persecution in South Africa and actual persecution in South Africa is a good reason not to want to live in South Africa. But if that is the only thing that is pushing you towards whatever country, it might be worth you looking into other options. So looking into the UK or Europe or Australia or New Zealand or South America. There are South American countries that would literally jump at the opportunity to have South Africans come to their countries, right? So you don't have to necessarily go to America. You have to understand something. When you go from South Africa to America, You will never cease being South African, but you must now attempt to become American. The last thing Americans need is South Africans arriving there and then want to maintain being South African. You have to integrate into their culture, into their society, into the way that they do things. And I will tell you guys, there's some head scratchers there. I have a friend. I'm literally going to him in about 2.5 hours. We're going to be watching the Super Bowl. Don't spoil the game for me, please. I purposefully avoided everything about the Super Bowl so that I can go watch it at his house because it's too late in the evening here in South Africa. So we're going to go watch the Super Bowl. Hopefully the Patriots won. That's what I'm hoping for. But anyways, he lived in America for about 8 years. And he told me some of the stuff that you need to expect just right off the bat. I'll give you guys a great example of this, just very quickly. You guys know how in South Africa, if people come over to visit you, yeah, at the end of the evening, you walk out with them to their car. Maybe you stand at the car and you have a bit of a chat. For like 10, 15 minutes, you have a bit of a chat. You watch them get into their car and they drive off. That whole sort of back and forth, that's a thing that we just do here in South Africa. The Americans don't do that. This was something that they had to just get this rude awakening. The very first time they had Americans from church over to come for dinner, they walked out with them at the end of the evening. And as they're standing by their car window, this American guy rolls down his window and he's like, "Why are you at my car?" And he's like, "I'm waiting for you to go." And he's like, "Why? I'm leaving." Apparently, they just walk out the house and close the door behind them. There's no following them outside. I don't know why, but that's just how it works, right? So those are small cultural things, and I'm saying this just to, you have to understand, this is going to be a new culture, and you're going to have to adapt to it. So make sure that there is something in your heart that pulls you towards America, that makes you want to live in America, want to become part of that culture. You'll always have a part of you be South African and be Afrikaans and be a person that comes from this lineage and your ancestors, but there's a new life awaiting you there, right? If you're going over as a single guy, you're probably going to meet an American woman, you're going to marry her, and you guys are going to have to figure out how to make her American culture and your South African culture work so that you can raise your children correctly. All of that stuff. This is the normal stuff. Now let's talk about the political stuff. Should you leave South Africa? Well, naturally, I think that boils down to another question. The question we want to ask there is there any saving South Africa? And of course, when I ask that question, I mean bar Christ's involvement. So I know that Jesus Christ can save this country tomorrow. He can save it right now. There can literally right now be a revival where every single racist EFF supporter and ANC supporter suddenly realize, oh, wow, what just happened, right? And that would be from Christ himself, and this country would be fixed. But that's not how God works, because God has a much larger plan in mind, one that we do not see until usually 100, 200 years later, right? So today, for example, we can look back at the Battle of Blood River, and we can ask ourselves, what was that day all about? Well, we now know why God defended and kept his people on that day. It was the preservation of Christianity in the southern part of Africa. That's why God kept them safe and gave them victory over the Zulus. Because Shaka Zulu was on a rampage. If they managed to, or was it Ngon? I always mix up the names. But the Zulus were on a rampage. If they beat the Voortrekkers there, they would have continued to slaughter Voortrekkers with every town that they met, because they had already killed a bunch of Voortrekkers before that battle. That battle was the end of the Zulu march to basically wipe out all Afrikaners in South Africa. It was Ngon. Yes, Shaka is the one that replaced him, and there was a bit of a kerfuffle there as well, right? I remember now, sorry, yeah. But that stopped the Dungan, and then of course Dungan fell as well, and then you have a whole new Zulu leader, and that Zulu leader actually starts quite a nice relationship with the Afrikaner that then allows them to sort of work together to get the British under control, and that would eventually devolve into a mess as well. But fundamentally, we can now look back and we can say, oh, that's why God kept the Afrikaners safe on that day and didn't give them into the hands of the Zulu. But that's usually just, we can look at it backwards and say, oh, that's why that happened. We can't see it in the moment because God's plans are not in the moment. It's not just, oh, I want them to have nice stuff now. God's plans play out over hundreds of years, and we have to sort of look back. We have to look back and say, oh, but there's maybe something more in the background there. So I'm just talking now from a normal perspective. Is it possible to save South Africa without war, without mass-scale civil war? I'm going to show you guys something. Let's hope that this video plays and my PC doesn't freak out again, because I'm not sure what's happening at the moment, but I really hope that this video will play. I need to show you guys this because it's going to put a lot of things into perspective for you on how communism works. And I'm not going to play the whole video for you, but there's a couple of things that you have to know about how communism functions. So just watch this.
Of Marxism, and I'm not exaggerating, I'm not making this up, this isn't my conclusion, this is actually...
Okay, just very quickly for those of you that don't know, this is James Lindsay. So James Lindsay is a mathematician, and he became famous as a result of a couple of scientific papers that him and a couple of other scientists posted that basically exposed the entire feminist critical race theory movement. They wrote articles about how a penis is an example of the patriarchy. They just literally invented a bunch of scientific facts, and it got published in all of these woke scientific journals. They all published all of their articles, even though none of the science is backed up, even though there's no critical theory anywhere in those papers. So this is how James Lindsay became famous. But he's made a study of communism and specifically Marxist thinking.
The ethic of Marxism is that which advances the opportunity for Marxists to take power, which is usually phrased, that which advances the revolution is ethical.
That's all I wanted to show you guys. So what James Lindsay is describing here, and I watched the whole show, but I won't show you the whole show. But did you guys hear that phrase? That which advances the revolution is ethical. Now, he actually explains how it works, right? How Karl Marx arrived at that conclusion. And in order to understand that, you have to understand something that is sometimes very much misunderstood by cultural Marxists, but also just by capitalists more broadly. So it is, a lot of people think that Karl Marx was describing or devising an economic system. But James Lindsay explains it, and after listening to his explanation, my brain literally just exploded, because I remember reading Karl Marx's works and just thinking, this guy doesn't have a clue. But that's because I wasn't reading it correctly. At least if James Lindsay is to be believed, Karl Marx never devised an economic state. Karl Marx devised a life philosophy. You see, Karl Marx's philosophy can effectively be summed up as homo economus. In other words, man is economics. Economics is man. Man is the result of the economic system. In other words, Karl Marx said, all men are naturally socialists. The mankind is naturally a socialist. But if you look throughout history at every single war, every single battle, every single revolution, what you find is as soon as you introduce private property to the mix, then you have war, because then it becomes a class struggle. As man naturally wants to be equal. Everyone wants to be equal. Now, anyone that knows anything about history will know that this is just so warped and twisted and almost a little bit historically illiterate. But this is fundamentally the Marxist starting point. Man is a socialist creature, and everything else, all capitalism, all forms of private ownership, all forms of private wealth, is an affront to man's natural state of socialism. So this is where that phrase comes in. Anything that advances the revolution is ethical. Why? Because if man's natural state is socialism, and anything that isn't socialism is constantly destroying man, that means that anything I must do in order to bring about the socialist revolution is ethical. If I have to kill 10,000 people, I am saving 8 billion people here. So killing 10,000 to save 8 billion, that's an ethical trade. And it sort of boils down to that old psychological experiment where they tell you you're on a train and there's a lever. If you pull the lever, you will kill 1 person. If you don't pull the lever, you'll kill 7 people. Do you pull the lever? Now, most normal people will pull the lever to kill the 1. Because, well, it's 1 person or 7 people. You do get some people who actually go and say, wait, hold on. If I just don't pull the lever, then those 7 people would have automatically died, but I'm not responsible for their deaths. They are the ones who put themselves on the train track, and they are the ones who are now being killed. But if I pull the lever, I am responsible for that 1 death. So I'm not pulling the lever. And then you obviously might have some psychopaths that go, 7 people, 1 person, 7 sounds good to me. But fundamentally, most people will just kill the 1 and hopefully allow for the 7 to die, or to be fine, right? But this is ultimately where the Marxist idea comes from. That which advances the revolution is ethical. So put that into context in South Africa. When we look at the blatant lies in this country about white people in this country, when we look at how leftist white people and black people can sit there and say, without even hesitating, there are no race laws in this country. And I mean, they say that there are 0 race laws in this country. And then you go, what is employment equity? What is affirmative action? What is black economic empowerment, if not race laws? And they go, well, it's redress laws. I say, well, yeah, but it's a race law, no? Why can they sit there and lie so blatantly to your face, to the world's face? Because that which advances the revolution is ethical. If I have to lie, if I have to reinvent language, if I have to deny the reality, but it advances the revolution, that is ethical. I am the good person here. You are the evil one that wants to go back to a capitalist free market hellscape. I want to bring us to the promised revolution. I want to bring us to the promised socialist society. And if I have to lie in order to get us there, let's go. For example, and this I was told on the beach on Saturday by the guy and his wife. He himself lost family in a farm murder. He lost family in a farm murder. His friends that he was in school with. So friends who knew his family members who got murdered on that farm are the very same friends who now tell him that Donald Trump is lying when he says that farmers are being murdered on farms in South Africa. These are people who know people that were murdered on farms, now saying Donald Trump is lying. Why are they doing that? Because that which advances the revolution is ethical. So denying reality, but trying to foster sort of a kumbaya nature in South Africa, this is also why they can sit there with a straight face and tell you that we who criticize South Africa are traitors to South Africa, because we're not promoting unity here in South Africa. And then my question always is the same. What unity do you want me to promote? Why should I have unity with people who sing "Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer"? Why would I have unity with that? Why should I sit around and build a country with a group of people who are more interested in blaming me for their own failures than what they are in actually fixing their lives. Just this afternoon or this morning, I showed you guys how Kim Heller and the left is now demanding that white people in South Africa pay reparations, because that apparently is now a thing that we must also start doing. And I ask myself, hold on, I have seen how the majority of this country operate. I have seen what the majority of poor black people in this country do when you give them even a little bit of money. It gets wasted. It gets, it gets spent at the shebeen, getting drunk for a couple of days, and then they go back to just being broke. I owned my own business. I remember paying my workers, and then on Monday morning, they would come to me and they'd be like, can I borrow 50 Rand? And I'd be like, dude, you were paid on Friday. And he's like, yeah, but I was busy. And then when I actually asked them, what did you do this weekend? At the shebeen, getting drunk. Spent all of the money on the first weekend, and now they have no money left. And now they have to borrow money against next week's paycheck because they have no money for this week. So you want to tell me that I'm going to give that guy that worked for me reparations of 100,000, and the shebeen is not just going to make a killing for like a month before there's no money left? Because poverty isn't a bank account number. You can have zero money in your bank account and still not be in poverty. Poverty is a mindset. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of applying yourself. And that's something that we just have here in South Africa in spades, poverty thinking. People who just constantly perpetuate the same nonsense because they don't have the education or the tools to do anything else. So from that perspective, first pillar, can this country be fixed economically? I doubt it. And I know the people from the DA will tell you, no, that's not true. The DA is on track to win the next election. I want to run a thought experiment with you guys. Let's imagine that the DA does win the next election. All right. Let's say the DA gets 35% of the vote in the next election, and the ANC gets 32%. And now the DA is in charge of the GNU, and the ANC has to take second place in the GNU. I don't imagine that would actually happen, but let's just imagine for a second that actually does happen. Fixing this country, how do you do that? Have you guys been keeping track of the Madlanga Commission? Have you seen the copious amounts of corruption in the police services of South Africa? Now imagine the corruption in government services in South Africa. Imagine the corruption in the military in South Africa. Imagine the corruption on municipal level in South Africa. It would take the DA another 15 to 20 years to probably just solve the corruption issues in this country, if they can even be fixed. Because the people that's supposed to investigate the corruption are the corrupt ones themselves. So even just there, let's be very good and say the DA moves super fast. Maybe the DA fixes the corruption problem within 10 years. But then actually fixing this country would take multiple years longer. You're probably looking at a minimum of like 30 years. Why do I say this? Because there is only one way to fix this country. Education. That's the only way you'll fix this country, is education. We need two pillars, two major things in this country. The first is a Christian revival, and I mean actual Christianity, not this nonsense of, you guys know these Christians that go next to the roads and sit in the fields with these white cloths on. That's sort of like a Zulu Christian amalgamation where they worship the forefathers and the ancestors, but also have some Christian. No. I mean actual Christian revival. The church needs to bring back moral values in our society. On a government level, we need education. Good schools where kids can actually learn how to apply logic, where kids can learn how to apply basic knowledge. That kid that gets that will not be rich. They might not even make it into middle class, but their kid might make it into middle class, and their kid might make it into rich, So you're looking at a minimum of 3 generations before you fix this country. Now, remember our actual topic for today. Should I stay in South Africa or should I leave? I'm building up to the answer. So follow along if you can. And I know I'm all over the place because I'm also reading chat and sort of going up and down. But it's going to take time. South Africa isn't going to be fixed with the next election. Even if the DA got a majority of the vote, even if the DA by some miracle gets 60% of the vote, they will not fix this country in the next 4 years. And sadly, the way South Africa works, the way all politics these days work, people don't want to wait, right? If the DA gets into power on the Wednesday and the rand didn't immediately half against the dollar by Friday, people go, the DA is a failure, I'm going to vote for someone else, right? Because in South Africa, some of the people are incredibly patient. But most people throughout the world think that as soon as a new president comes in, the country needs to change immediately and off we go, right? So that is just not going to work. So if you are looking at this country, you have to understand if you're going to stay here, you're probably going to be here for another 20 years before things are theoretically going to get better, if all things go great, right? Now, better is relative because it can get a lot better in a single year. It won't be fixed, and a lot of the problems won't go away. But imagine just a country where services are actually delivered, where the roads are actually fixed, and where we're not being bled dry from our own money, right? The government just stealing all of our own money. That would already be a massive improvement. But we're still a long way off from saying we're a country on the way to actually being good or actually being, sort of like a first world country, right? Or at least becoming a first world country. But then let's look at what the actual South African government is doing now. And as you guys know already, I do not believe that the DA will come into power. Let me be very clear. The DA will not win the next election. You want to know how I know that? Because the proportion of the South African black population that refuses to vote for anything other than progressive forces has never changed. I made an entire video on this, showing you the actual data. In 1994, 67% of the black population of South Africa voted for Nelson Mandela and the ANC. In 2024, 65% of the black population of South Africa voted for the ANC, the EFF, and the MK. If you actually look at the National Party, what you find is that the National Party got nearly 21% of the vote in 1994. What's the percentage of the DA vote nationally on average? 21 to 23%. In other words, there has been zero change politically in this country at all. The majority of black South Africans continue to vote for the ANC, the MK, and the EFF, the progressive communist forces of this country. So, even if the ANC drops to 30%, that will simply mean that the MK most likely goes to 40%, EFF probably goes to 15 or 20%, but collectively, those three arms of government, of political parties, will remain at between 60 and 65% of the national vote. The DA will never get into national government. Not as long as those three parties remain, and not as long as the majority of black people continue to vote the way that they are. So then, Q1 Million, thank you so much for the €6. Really appreciate you, sir. Thank you. Glad you're being honest and having this conversation with everyone. Q1 Million, it is my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for the donation. It really does mean the world to me. Okay, so there's a couple of things that I want to show you guys as we're going into the reality that the DA will not run this country. You're gonna be stuck with some form of progressive government probably for the next 10, 15 years. This is happening right now. Hundreds of jobs are being cut across South Africa in almost every single industry. This is just the latest. This is in the motor industry, and guess why this is happening? our friendship with with the Chinese. You see, China not being capable of selling all of their vehicles in America because America has a ban on Chinese vehicles and not being able to sell their cars to their own people. What are they doing? They're just dumping it in any country that they can get their hands on. And fundamentally, as a result of this, our own workers are being laid off from retail giants. This isn't even manufacturing. This isn't a company that manufactures cars. They just sell cars. Why are they firing a bunch of people? Because the Chinese vehicles are so cheap that the margins on those vehicles cannot sustain the retail outlets. They just don't make enough money on any of these cars. So fundamentally, they have to let a bunch of people go and they have to sort of reinvent a bunch of mechanisms so that these cars can actually work. So you're just getting, and by the way, the Chinese don't produce their cars here. They just said they're going to open a manufacturing plant for one of their vehicles here. Guess how the Chinese manufacturing plants operate? They bring Chinese people over, and the Chinese people are the ones building it. Just FYI. So yeah, just in case you needed to know this, this is the fundamental facts on the ground. We have more taxes that is potentially coming in now. This story particularly has, well, how do I put this? Without going too deep into the story, it's a little bit of a wordplay on the idea of tax hikes because it ascribes price increases thanks to foot-and-mouth disease and thanks to the crumbling of the South African farm industry to the government as a form of tax, right? So it's not so much necessarily just taxes. There's a lot more to it than that. But fundamentally, yes, the government is looking into ever-increasing taxes just in the form of the fuel levy, sin taxes, and there's some VAT changes that's happening that's actually probably going to make things a lot worse. Not the VAT tax being increased, but they're looking into a number of changes. Atlantis, for the 35 Rand donation, truly appreciate you. Thank you, sir. You're very, very kind. I want to tell you guys something about foot-and-mouth disease. Just this morning, I'm having a conversation with a family member of mine who is a farmer, and specifically a beef farmer, right? Cow farmer, but in beef, right? So not milk, beef. And I asked him, I was like, how are things with the foot-and-mouth disease? And he's like, well, we can't sell our cattle. And I'm like, do you have foot-and-mouth disease on your farm? And he's like, no, I have no foot-and-mouth in my herd, but the auctions are closing down. And so I asked him, wait, what do you mean the auctions are closing down? Like, how big of a deal is that actually? And he's like, well, considering the fact that that's one of the biggest line items for smaller cow farmers or cattle farmers, that's a big deal. The vast majority of smaller farmers tend to make a lot of money selling their bulls and selling the cows that they can't send to the abattoir at the auctions. But these auctions are closing down because of foot-and-mouth disease, which suddenly means that you're going to have a crap ton of farmers that cannot sustain their herds. Apparently, the last few auctions in their area are all now sending out notifications saying they're probably not going to get back up again. There's most likely not going to be auctions for the foreseeable future. Let's put this into consideration. Our esteemed, and by the way, I don't blame Steenhuisen for the problems with foot-and-mouth. He didn't create them. He's not the guy that looked after and allowed it to get as bad as it is. He's making a lot of mistakes in the handling of this disease. But let's just say, because right now they're making a big deal of how they're going to be able to produce around 20,000 vaccines a month with this new plant that they just got up and running, which is actually pretty good, just FYI. The fact that he was able to get this plant up and running in as quick a time as he has, very good. That's really not bad. Right now, the estimates are anywhere from 20,000 vaccines per week to 20,000 vaccines per month, maybe as high even as 100,000 vaccines per month. Well, that sounds great, right? That sounds like, oh, so we've solved the problem. Except we didn't. There are 14 million cows in the national herd that needs to be vaccinated. Even at 100,000 vaccines a month that you're producing, that's 120,000. That's 1.2 million cows a year, give or take. Right? A year. And that's not even the second vaccination that they have to get. That's just the first. So you have 1.2 million that have received at least one, or 600,000 that have received two. So you're looking at a minimum of a decade just to get the herd immunized once, not even a second time. So let's say you only have to do it once, because apparently this new vaccine can only be administered once and then it doesn't have to do it again. So let's imagine that is actually true. Let's imagine they can actually just do it once and then that's it. You're looking at almost over a decade. I think it's something like 12 or almost 13 years at current rate of production to get the entire national herd immunized. How many farmers do you think can hold out for a decade before they can finally start making money again? I'll tell you, not many. In fact, most can't. This is a problem at an epic scale. Unlike anything you can imagine. Beef prices are about to explode. It is about to get very bad in this country. If you're someone that eats beef, you're in trouble. Guess what that means? The fact that more and more people are going to not buy beef means that they're going to switch to pork and chicken. What do you think happens when the supply for pork and chicken remains the same, but the demand for pork and chicken increases exponentially? The price for pork and chicken goes up. Now imagine suddenly a bird flu outbreak, because that does happen from time to time. Imagine that happens. You'll pay anywhere from 1,000 rand a kilo for beef to 400 or 500 rand a kilo for chicken. So people will just have to stop buying meat entirely, because we have no beef coming for at least the next half decade, or very little beef coming for at least the next half decade. And this is going to put pressure on the other meats. So fundamentally, there is a lot of trouble coming our way. A lot of trouble coming our way with the farming situation. And what is South Africa's government doing about it? Congratulations if you're one of the 2%, I believe. It's a little more than 2%. Let's say 5%. So currently about 2.4 million South Africans pay around 70% of all of the taxes in South Africa. 2.4% pay around 77% of all income tax in South Africa. That's as things currently stand. Guess what? SARS is increasing their ability to extract even more money from that 2.4%. Now, very few of us would actually be in this category, because these are the richest of the richest people in our country. These are people that are earning over 500,000 rand a year, I believe it is. So I don't know how many of you actually live in around 500,000, make more than 500,000 rand a year in South Africa. But if you do, congratulations, SARS is coming after you even harder. Why is that such a big problem? Well, because in most countries where you have this insane amount of taxes being extracted from the population, there is actual service delivery. There is actually the government making an effort to provide for the money that they extract. Moreover, most countries actually have a lot of loopholes that allow for citizens to not actually pay that insane amount of tax. In South Africa, the government isn't growing the economy, which would automatically grow the tax base. Instead, they're just going, the few people that are paying taxes, they just go. Straat, I'm going to get to that. I promise. I'm going to get to answering that question for you. We're working our way towards it. So from a tax perspective, if you stay in South Africa, you're in for a wild ride. Trust me when I say they're going to figure out new and inventive ways to extract even more money from you. Because if you have a government that is consistently spending more than what it's earning, and it doesn't have any hope in hell of actually growing the economy. And I need to make this super clear for everyone. There are no green shoots of the economy. In spite of what President Cyril Ramaphosa wants to tell you, in spite of what Jordan Neal Lewis wants to tell you, in spite of what John Steenhuisen and Helen Zille and the whole GNU establishment wants to tell you, there are no green shoots to the economy. And we can examine this. Economic growth for South Africa has been stagnant for more than 2 decades now, where we have almost zero economic growth. Even the economic growth that they are currently touting as a little bit up, I believe they now think it's going to be about 1.2 to 1.3% in the next quarter, right? That is well below population growth in South Africa. And if your economic growth is lower than your population growth, you have a shrinking economy. You want your economic growth to be at least on par with your population growth, if not more. So your economy is still shrinking because you have more people relying on an ever smaller economy. So fundamentally, South Africa's economy has been going downward since before Jacob Zuma even took office. But nevertheless, never mind that. We'll just focus on this new 1.5%. Right? The 1.5% is attributed to the gold price. That's it. And famously, historically, the gold price does not keep going up. Eventually, the gold price will start to taper off. And when the gold price starts to taper off, all of that 1.5% growth that is forecasted will collapse. It will just go away. Why is that? Well, have you seen massive new investment in things that will actually create jobs in South Africa? Have you seen any real change in the business environments in South Africa? Have you seen the government doing anything that would actually stimulate economic growth? Because I haven't. I've heard the president say things like green shoots of our economic plan. I've heard the president say that they have a 10-point plan, which really is just a 10-point wish list of things that they want to do. There's no plan. A plan is here's the dream and here's how we're going to get there. Theirs is just here's the dream. How we get there, we'll figure it out on the way. So, I've heard the president say a lot of words, but the actual effect of it, I have not seen. Even if we look at the rand doing so much better to the dollar, it has to be seen in actual context. When compared to the dollar, the euro and the pound, the rand has actually gotten weaker, not stronger. And when compared to the dollar in actual weakening sense, the dollar is weakened by over 3%. The rand has strengthened to the dollar by just over 2%. So in reality, the rand has actually shrunk against the dollar. The rand has not grown. The rand isn't stronger. The dollar is merely weaker. And we saw that last week when the dollar recovered and suddenly the rand had an entire 1 rand wiped off of its value. It went from 15.50 to 16.50 in literally the blink of an eye. Just boom, right back. So if the dollar suddenly makes a surge, if the investors suddenly realize that President Trump is actually doing a good thing in America and the economy is actually coming back, you will see the rand take a pummeling. And I actually think that by the end of this year, if President Trump's plans play out, we will look at a rand breaking 20 rand to the dollar. That's my prediction. So from a business perspective, from a financial perspective, I wouldn't hold my breath that life is going to get a lot better here in South Africa in the very near term. What's the other story I wanted to show you guys very quickly here? No, that's just me dunking on someone. Crime. We can probably just look at crime here for 2 seconds. If you look at the actual periods here from about 1993 all the way up to 2010, you have crime rates in South Africa falling significantly. And from 2011 all the way up to 2024, what do we see? Crime is once again getting worse. And this is murder. So this isn't even all crime. This is just murder rates are actually getting worse in South Africa. So staying in South Africa will also probably mean murder and stuff, right? So just keep that in mind as well. And then, of course, we get back to people like Herman Mashaba, the political class, and I'm going to end on this before we get into the actual answering of the question. We have in South Africa, if you are a white person, you have to understand anything that advances the revolution is ethical. You have to understand this. Blaming white people is ethical because it advances the revolution. Blaming white people for everything is ethical because it advances the revolution. Herman Mashaba, Julius Malema, Cyril Ramaphosa, no matter who it is, blaming white people advances the revolution. It creates the boogeyman that the black majority requires to blame for the mistakes and the problems of the country. So if you are a white person living in South Africa, if you are a white person currently residing here in our country, you need to understand something. You are the scapegoat by design. This isn't accidental. This isn't stupidity. This isn't the government just being a little greedy. This is a designed play. The idea is that if they continue to blame you, they can continue to steal, rob, and push their revolution. So every single politician in this country have a vested interest in ensuring that white people remain the biggest problem. And as you can see here, there's nothing you and I can do to stop it. There's nothing you and I can do to stop it. Here's Herman Mashaba himself saying, we are being insulted again. Even if 100% of white South Africans had voted to end apartheid, it wouldn't make up for the pain and grief the system inflicted on the majority of South Africans. So even if 100% of white South Africans voted to end apartheid, they would still not be forgiven for the crimes of apartheid. Crimes that, by the way, the majority of them did not commit. Crimes that, by the way, the majority of us were not party to. I was 9 when apartheid ended. To the best of my knowledge, I was not involved in any oppressive actions at the age of 9. I don't know. It is possible. I mean, it's theoretically possible that I may have run some slave labor operation at the age of 7. But if I'm not mistaken, that would have interfered with my nap time at kindergarten or at grade 1. Or maybe playing with clay would have been more important to me at that time. I don't know. I am just spitballing here, but I'm fairly sure I wasn't involved in any sort of slave labor camps or anything of that nature. And yet, according to Herman Mashaba, I am still to blame. It is still my fault that all of these things are happening. Just over the week, over the weekend, I had a rather interesting conversation with a journalist. I don't know how many of you have seen that by now. I got my ass whipped. 100% got absolutely humiliated by Johan Allers. He's a retired journalist. I think entirely humiliated is the wrong word, but I learned a lot from that conversation, specifically in how leftists operate and think. And from that conversation, I can tell you there isn't a lot of saving in this country. There isn't a lot to save in this country, not from the leftists. And it saddens me to admit that we, the ones who actually care about freedom, who actually care about truth, are in the minority. We are not in the majority. The vast majority of South Africans buy into this racial game. They like the racial game. The names are being changed once again. Graaf Reinet just got a new name from some idiot that used to live once upon a time. Apparently he was a great freedom fighter. I've never heard of the dude. But the names are being changed once again because why wouldn't they? It is the erasure of being white. It's the erasure of the Afrikaner people. So now let's talk about the topic. Should you or should you not stay in South Africa? Now, I want to be super clear about this. I am not telling you to go or to stay. That's not the purpose of this conversation. I am not making decisions on your behalf. I am merely telling you the truth. I'm merely telling you what is the reality. If you stay in South Africa, you have to be willing to accept that on paper, at least, you are in for another 3 decades of suffering. You are in for another 3 decades of suffering. Because I know that Frans Cronje and the Institute of Race Relations run their polls every single year, and it shows that the majority of South Africans actually just want jobs and want freedom, and they actually don't care about communism. But when I look at how they vote, 2/3 of black people in South Africa vote for communist parties. So at some point, I have to say, I believe you, Frans, that's how people answer your poll. But I don't think that's what they believe. Because I can look at how they vote, and how they vote is clearly not conservative. It looks progressive as hell. That's what it looks like. So you're going to have to accept that. And I'm not saying that it can't change sooner, right? It could change within 5 years from now, but it could also not. So just keep that in mind if you decide to stay. Moreover, and this might be a question that a lot of people are struggling with, am I a traitor to my people when I leave? If I leave this country, am I a traitor? Am I leaving my people behind, washing my hands of them and going? And to that, I would argue, it depends on what you do when you go. There is a role and a reason for every single person. And I'll answer this for myself. If I were granted the opportunity to leave South Africa tomorrow, right? If I were granted the opportunity to go to another country, say America, I would use this new freedom of speech to go a lot harder than what I'm currently going. Of course I would. Because I would finally have the ability to say what actually needs to be said without the government being able to arrest me. I would finally be able to investigate things that I previously couldn't investigate. So I would have a role for going there, right? I would have a reason for actually going there and actually helping my people on this side. If you are someone that goes to America or goes to the UK or Europe or Australia or wherever, there might be a reason for you to be there. There might be a reason why you are called to that other country. So I don't believe that this is you just being a traitor. I don't believe that you are betraying your people by going, but I do believe that it will be dependent upon your own actions from that moment forward. Are you going to the rest of the world and educating people about the reality of what's going on in South Africa? Or are you going and closing the door behind you? Right? Those are big questions that you're going to have to answer for yourself. So I personally think that if you can get out, if it is possible for you to go out, you probably should. And the main reason for it is I don't see much of a realistic future in this country aside from some form of civil war. And it doesn't even have to be a civil war amongst black or white people. I think there's going to be problems with Islamic immigration in this country long before there's a problem between white and black in this country. I think there's going to be problems between the different black tribes in South Africa long before that problem even becomes a racial problem. I just fundamentally don't see an avenue without some kind of conflict. That's the truth. That's the reality of it. I'm not sure, right? I'm genuinely not sure. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there is some world. Maybe there's some of you here that go, but Stefan, you're not considering this, that, or the other. And I want to hear those opinions from you. I want to hear what I'm missing. That's the point of me making this video, right? Is I'm giving you my thoughts, but I want to know what is your opinion? Like, what am I not seeing? Because I'm probably missing stuff, right? I'm just one guy. I do all of my own research. I form all of my own opinions. So there's a good chance that I'm missing stuff. If you go, you will always be a foreigner. This is no easy thing, to be honest. Ian, you're not wrong, right? You're not wrong. But then at the same time, I know of plenty of people who did leave South Africa and go to other countries and who integrated perfectly into those other countries. I know of people who are currently in America who say the Americans are amazing. They're so friendly. They love meeting South Africans. They're crazy about us. I know an American guy that basically only hires South African boys to work on his farm because he says they just work so much harder than anyone else, right? So we're definitely loved in parts of America. And I think it depends also on your mindset. This is something that you're also going to have to understand. This is what I said at the beginning of the stream. If you're going there with this idea, I am South African, and I'm just going to live in America, you're always going to be a foreigner. That's true. You have to understand if you get on a plane and you go to America, you become American. You have to adopt their culture, their practices. It doesn't mean that you can't still appreciate your own things, right? It doesn't mean that you can't still have, teach them how to braai and teach them how to watch rugby and eat biltong. You can do those things, right? But you have to also do make effort to integrate into their society. Because if you don't, they're going to get very annoyed with you, and you're probably going to get very annoyed with them. You're probably going to get very annoyed with each other. For me, that is, okay, wait. Assimilate into your new country. Lynn, very, very true. Second-class citizens. Americans are amazing. I run a web dev agency, and they love dealing with me because of work ethics. I think many South Africans earn as digital nomads here. Also very true. Also very true. We all love this country, but it is what makes it so painful. It is like watching part of you rot away. Just need to point out, right? And Kimmy, by the way, is from America. Just FYI, we have at least one American in here. Just want to be clear about that for those of you that don't know. Kimmy comes from my gaming days. I've known her for very, very long. So she is American, and she'll tell you the melting pot melts. Americans love foreigners, provided that those foreigners actually want to become American. If you don't, that's where they get a little annoyed with you, right? Or at least very annoyed with you. If you want to get there and you want to tell them how they should be dealing with their stuff, they don't like that. But otherwise, they're very happy to have people from other countries. After what my kids have gone through in this country and based on where SA is going, we have decided to go for their future. I think if you have children, that is super important, that you keep your kids in mind. This is about your children's future. And if I listen to everything that our government is saying, they are hell-bent on destroying the futures of South African kids, specifically white kids in this country. And this is all part of it. Cyril Ramaphosa told us that this is what they're going to do, right? This isn't something new. This is Cyril Ramaphosa's own play, is this. He said, before 1994, Cyril Ramaphosa himself said, I will boil the white people like frogs. That is his own quote, right? So this is what they want. We're going exactly where they want us. Exactly well said. Integration is key. You adopt a new culture, but you keep your heritage that runs alongside it. Yeah, you have to, right? You can't go there and suddenly try to force. The one thing that I think all South Africans should start doing, though, and this is maybe a pledge that we can all make, and I want all of you to pledge on this. You will do whatever it takes to teach those Americans how to use the metric system. I think we can all agree that it is a superior system. And now that some of you are getting the opportunity to go to the land of the free, it might be time to teach those free bastards how freeing the metric system can actually be. If we can do that, we as South Africans would have done the world a favor. My husband is USA citizen. We have a lot of similarities and differences. True. That is very, very true. Vibing Viking with the 14 rand donation. Truly appreciate you, sir. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You are far too kind. Is it more selfish to stay or go with kids in mind? No, I think if you have children, the selfish thing would be to stay. You have to think of your kids' future, right? But again, this is dependent on you and on your own mindset. I have plenty of friends who have children who are staying right here because they believe that there is a future in this country and they believe that their future is here. If that's genuinely what you believe, then you must stay. You must follow what your heart tells you. What I don't want, and this is what I mean when I say it is selfish if you have children, if the only reason you're not going is because you're afraid, right? But you know for your kids it will probably be a better life, that's the selfish part of it. So it's neutral, dependent on how you feel about it. Like, what's your heart about this? For myself, right? So just putting this out there. For myself, if I had the opportunity tomorrow to go to America, I would take that opportunity because I have always loved America. Always. America has always, to me, represented that land on the hill, right? That country, that shining beacon on the hill. And as much as I, in recent years, and I'm really talking about the last 3 or 4 years of my life, I had fallen in love with my own people, my own culture. I had fallen in love with the people of South Africa in a way that can only be ascribed to Christ, right? Because prior to becoming Christian, I couldn't wait to leave South Africa. It was the biggest dream for me, was getting out of this country and going to America. And when I came to faith and I started making friends and I started appreciating what my people are, I fell in love with my people. But I still have that America is the land of the free. It's the cowboys, right? It's the frontier. It's that shining beacon on the hill. So in my heart, if America came calling, if there was an opportunity for me to go, I would go, right? But my work for South Africa would never end. At least from my perspective, I don't want to say too much because I will probably get in trouble even just for mentioning it. But there are stories that I am sitting on that I cannot make because I know if I do, my life will be in danger. There are stories that I can make right now that would get me in trouble. So I can't make those stories. I can't make those videos. Well, I don't even have all of the information yet, but the information that I do have, I can't disclose. And I can't do any real research on that because I could get in trouble. And I'm sure this is true for a lot of people in the media, a lot of people in the creator space that want to say certain things, but they know it'll be the end of it, right? So currently, my thinking would be if I uncover more, I'll just pass that information on to someone like Chris Wyatt and ask him, Colonel, please do it, right? Put it out there so that people know the truth, because I can't do it, right? But that's the nature of things. So I would use that just as a way of more free speech to allow me to do the things that need to be done and to hopefully help this country grow more and become more free. Nicholas, thank you so much for the $4 or the 70 Rand donation. I truly appreciate you, sir. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I have a much better solution. If you can't leave, start buying guns and gear and MREs, set up solar in your home, and learn how to use your gear and guns, etc. Also, the Imperial system is superior. You and I will never agree on that, sir. Has the same problem in the UK. Yeah, I think a lot of countries throughout the world has a lot of this. To love America, there is a reason. It is one of the new main gateways out of South Africa in everyone's mind. There are countries where people are almost like South Africans, easy alignment. Kwarasi, I have known a ton of Americans. And I can honestly tell you, I've never met an American. Now, to be fair, all of the Americans I know are conservatives. I have never met an American that I don't get along with. They genuinely, from a cultural perspective, at least from a worldview perspective, we see the world the same way. So I would argue America itself is probably that. And Alan's no. I mean, to be fair, even if I was, I wouldn't tell you. But no, right? This for me is just, this is a pure thought experiment, right? The stream is just to sort of run people, because I get a lot of these questions from people. Should I stay? Should I leave? What should I do? And I wanted to sort of give you a way to think about it without just giving you an answer. I want you to be able to go and sit by yourself, pray about this, and think, what should I do? And so, of course, I'm giving you how I would think about it. It's an option. We are busy with it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. My view on it has always been the same. Knock on every single door, and if God opens a door for you, that door needs to be open for you. If God doesn't open that door, that's not a door that you should walk through. And trust in the Lord. Pray and ask Him, God, show me the way, right? And He's not going to tell you what the future is. He's not going to suddenly tell you, go through this door because life is going to be good. But He will be with you no matter what the choices you make, right? And this is another thing that I can say to the Christians, at least in chat, that might be thinking to themselves, I really want to go, but I'm so afraid. What are you afraid of? The creator of the universe will be there with you. I had this conversation with my brother yesterday, where I say to him, so many people in this world have this thought, I want to get a new job, or I want to buy this house, but what if something goes wrong? What if I take this new job and then the company goes bankrupt and then I lose everything, or I'm not happy there and then I lose everything? What if something goes wrong? And then I say to him, the question is, what if something goes wrong? Well, what if you stay at your job and your company that you're currently working for goes bankrupt? What if you stay in your job and you suddenly get cancer? What if you stay in your job and you suddenly get hit by a car and now you can't walk anymore? What if you stay in your job and suddenly the market crashes and they fire you? Things going wrong will happen whether you stay or go. It's life. It always goes wrong. No matter where you go, Christ will be with you. So if you get on that plane and you go to America and you start your life there, whether it goes well, whether it goes poorly, God will be with you. Whether you stay in South Africa and you go through things here and it goes badly, God will be with you. So don't worry about that. He's going to be with you either way. You choose the door and then walk through it. It's as simple as that. A lot of countries are going to suffer hard for driving out their intelligent people. Yes, we prayed on it. God opened so many doors, and biggest gift is the refugee program. I don't want to... so can I just warn all of you in chat, and I'm begging you guys, do not say whether or not you're part of the refugee program. Please keep that off social media. I am begging you. There are so many reports of people getting harassed, people getting attacked. There are groups constantly looking for people who are applying for the refugee status thing. Do not advertise your position until you go, until you are out, right? That day that you land in America and you kiss the free land of America, then by all means, right? Tweet out, guys, I just arrived. Oh, say, can you see? All of that you can immediately do, right? But while you're here, don't advertise it because you're going to get into trouble, guaranteed. What happens to the refugee program if Democrats win in the USA in a few years? Launas, this is a good question. Fundamentally, it's very politically sensitive to turn a refugee program around. So even if you look at Donald Trump has not reversed the actual refugees that came in through the democratic system, right? So while the Democrats, Joe Biden was in office, there were a lot of people who were permitted into America as refugees that were not really refugees. But even Donald Trump, President Trump is incredibly serious about illegal immigration. Even he won't touch the people that came legitimately as refugees. It's a pretty dark thing for a country to sort of just kick out a bunch of refugees. You went in legally, so, as long as you don't break the law, I don't believe that they can actually get rid of you. I believe the law of America would make that very difficult. They could stop it, right? So if the next president is a Democrat, he could stop refugees from South Africa. Sure, that's something he could do. But I don't believe he can just kick out refugees. I do think there are laws in America that does protect that from happening. I'd have to check it out. I would genuinely have to look it out. But I don't think so. Eendracht maak macht. Never forget, Owens. Is the problem of our time not politicians and politics? I do not think they are regulated enough. Sam, the problem of our time is, I don't think it's just a single thing. So, in my opinion, the biggest problem of our time is communism. Communism has provided an easy avenue for pretty much anyone who feels like they lack value in their lives, who feels like they lack purpose in their lives, can find purpose within the communist revolution. That would be, I think, the biggest problem. The politicians are just it's a side effect of this problem, right? Because the politicians have realized that communism is an easy answer. Communism is a very nice way of getting elected. And it is, right? If you ask me, okay, so here, I'm going to give you guys why communism is so difficult to destroy. You have two candidates. One is a communist, one is a capitalist. And you ask him, how are you going to fix the economy? The capitalist goes, well, we're going to deregulate the market and look at the laws that are currently stopping companies from being formed, as well as look at how we can make investment easier into the market. And then hopefully free market capitalist companies will start up, will start building their companies, will start employing more people. And then after a while, these people that are employed will use their money to buy more things, and that will then grow the economy. It's a very long answer, but that's the correct way of doing it. The communist goes, I'll tax the rich. Which one do you think gets more votes? The I tax the rich guy. Because people like easy answers. Trying to explain to them the mechanisms of the free market, most people's eyes glaze over and they're just like, tax the rich. Oh yeah, I understand that. There's rich people, you're going to take their money and give it to me. That makes perfect sense to me. I'll vote for this guy. That's the problem with communism. It provides very easy answers to very complex problems. The answers aren't the right ones, but it's an answer. And as long as it's an answer, that's really all that matters. Leslie, how are you doing? You have a brilliant chat platform, very impartial and informative. Thank you very much. I would say, though, Leslie, I am definitely not impartial. Just to point that out. I am not unbiased. Alan, how you doing, bro? I'm not unbiased and I'm not impartial. I am very much partial and I'm very much biased. I'm biased towards freedom. I'm biased towards free markets. I'm biased towards my own people, the Afrikaner people, and people who share the heart of an Afrikaner. Because I don't believe you have to be white and Afrikaans to be an Afrikaner. If you're someone that cares about freedom, if you're someone that cares about Christian morals and values, if you're someone that cares about living your life and not having people dictate to you what you can and cannot do, as far as I'm concerned, you're an Afrikaner. Congratulations. You might be as English as they come, but on the heart, on the basic fundamental issue, you and I can build a country together. I view you as my brother or my sister because that's the people that I want to build with. If you believe in collective thinking and you believe in collective sort of innocence and guilt, then I do not view you as an Afrikaner, because by that point I would have to conclude that Piet Kroukamp is an Afrikaner. I would have to say that Max de Pree is an Afrikaner. I would have to say that Pieter Kriel is an Afrikaner. And there is no shot that Pieter Kriel is an Afrikaner. Like anarchist libertarianism? No, Manny. So there's a big difference between what I believe in libertarianism or even anarchist or anarchy. So I used to be an anarchist. I genuinely was, right? About 2.5 years ago, I was an anarchist. The problem was when I came to faith, so when I accepted Jesus Christ and I started reading the Bible, there were a couple of things that started to make sense to me. The whole premise of anarchy derives from this idea and rests upon the concept that all people are roughly good. Right? Most people are kind of good. Yes, there's people that have this incredible notion to evil, but most people just want to live and let live. This is fundamentally not true. This is fundamentally not true. Most people, if you remove the rules, have an insane capacity for evil. The reason most people aren't evil isn't because they don't want to be evil, it's because they're afraid of getting caught. It's as simple as that. The reason most people don't grab their gun and shoot the guy that just cut them off in traffic isn't because they feel some moral thing for not doing it. It's because they're afraid of getting caught. And we can do this test. How many times have you driven on a road in South Africa and a taxi just swerved right in front of you and you had this fleeting thought, if I had a gun with me now? How many times has that happened? And what stops you, if you are really honest with yourself, isn't the fact that, oh, but it's a human being. I don't want to take a human life. I don't want to go to jail. Simple as that. That's the issue, right? If you remove the rules and you just let people live, you will have chaos in an instant. This is the problem with anarchy. The human heart is vile and corrupt. If you remove the rules, and this is why the government's job, this is why Jesus gives the government the instruction to keep justice. The church keeps morals, the government keeps justice. Because without the government keeping justice, those people who are not Christian will devour everyone that is. And I don't mean by that all non-Christians will just devour. You do get people who, they'll do evil things in some ways, but they won't kill people, right? Everyone has their own limits because God is still present in every single person's life. So by this, I don't mean that all non-Christians will just go and rampage murder people. That's not what I'm saying, right? I'm saying if you don't have the government keeping justice, those people that do have that propensity to do very, very evil things will just do it. Because most people's hearts is corrupt. People are not inherently good. This is the main principle of the Bible. Genesis literally begins by describing to us the heart of man. And if you want books that actually confirm this, go read the Gulag Archipelago from Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Just go do yourself a favor and read that book. Go read that book from Alexander Solzhenitsyn to see the incredible evil that exists in the heart of ordinary man. Ordinary people. People who had no power, no status. These were people who were oppressed, thrown into the gulags by the oppressive Soviet Russian regime, and they become the oppressors themselves. There is no such thing as a good human. So anarchy cannot work. As much as I like the idea on paper, because no government, you need a government. You need a government that holds the monopoly on force and can tell criminals no. No. I would actually have a government that goes much further. So for rape, that's death. I would give the death penalty for rape, pedophilia, death penalty. I would take the Epstein list and I would basically just have a bunch of death penalties waiting. I know a lot of people wanted me to talk about the Epstein list. Uh, I don't know where to begin. I'm one guy. There are over 3 million pages. I can't investigate all of that by myself. I just can't. I am trying my best to keep up with the Epstein list as it happens, and I'm trying to work through it as much as I can, but it is just too much for me to go through. That which I have gone through and that which I have watched, it's exactly what I said it's going to be. It's going to turn into a witch hunt because you have a lot of allegations mixed in with a lot of fact, and people are treating the allegations as if they're fact, and you're getting a lot of innocent people caught up in it. And the fact of the matter is, I don't think people know how to deal with this. Leaving in July, speculating about leaving is easier than leaving. Let me say that. Oh, yeah, I have no doubt. I think the moment that you realize it's time to go, I think that's a very hard decision to make. I can just imagine. Anyone can have a moment of weakness. It's what you've been taught that keeps you in check. It's what your parents teach you that builds a good character, whether it be from the Bible or their principles. Redosian, most of the things that you hold as just good principles are biblical concepts. Right? So people will say, do unto others. That's a biblical concept. And it isn't a concept that existed before the Bible. The tribes around the Israelites were not doing unto others as they would want done unto them. Right? That's not how that worked in the Old Testament. So fundamentally, a lot of the things that people want to consider as just good moral principles or just Christian principles, but because you live in a mostly Christian society, Tom Holland, the historian, not the actor, he has a book about this, and he actually uses the following terminology. Most people who live in the West are fish swimming in Christian waters. So what he effectively says is, you cannot convince a fish of water. Like, how would you convince a fish that water is real? It's just the thing that he lives in, right? Like, this is just what it is. Like, I don't understand water. What do you mean? This is just where I live, right? That's just how it is. Most people in the West swim in Christian waters, and they don't even realize that what you think is good is just because of the society that you were brought up in. And the society that you were brought up in is because of Christianity. It could very easily not have been that. I mean, you maybe would have lived in Iran, right? Or a country like Iran. If you want to know what it looks like when you remove Christianity from the equation, you can look to the Middle East. That's a great example of societies where Christianity is not. You can look at parts of Africa that are majority Muslim, a lot of African countries that are majority tribal. You can look to South America, some of the Amazon tribes that still exist, where you get cannibalism, human sacrificing, just all sorts of terrible things that you do not want to live under, right? That's what societies look like without Christ. So you do have to accept that you live in a society where you assume a lot of things are just, well, this is just good moral values. But those good moral values are not universal. They stem from a Christian ethic. And because you're not a Christian, but you were brought up in a Christian country, you just assume this is how it always is. Blade Trainer, thank you so much for the $8 or the 140 Rand donation. I truly appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Your donations are so, so kind, guys. What you're arguing is morals from consequence versus morals from principle, but I don't think it's right to say intrusive thoughts speak for how people truly want to act on default. That's not what I said, Blade. I just said people have that thought if I had a gun right now. And you are right. Those are intrusive thoughts. My principle wasn't that intrusive thoughts just mean that's what you would do. My principle is that you're not acting on a lot of your thoughts, not because of some internal principle, but really just on the external. I don't want to get locked up. I don't want to get caught. But if you knew you could do that and never get caught, there's probably a lot of things you would do. And we do see that in lawless societies. Societies tend to become more lawless. Lawless societies don't become more lawful unless there's force. right? Unless the government forcibly reinforces order, lawless societies tend more lawless. They don't tend more lawful. So that's more the point I was making. But you are absolutely correct, Blade. All intrusive thoughts are not automatically things that you're going to be doing, right? If that is what it sounded like I was saying, that wasn't the intention. So thank you for correcting me on that. Thank you for the time to answer me. Rhodesian, it's my absolute pleasure. We got our own problems, people. Watch your children. Men, look after your women. I hope you don't mean fatigue. That is the biggest story of your lifetime. Tekla, so what a lot of people mean when they say they have Epstein fatigue is that the story itself, the actual evils that were committed by Epstein and his fellow cronies, that people are super interested in. But what they're interested in is actual people going to jail, actual people paying for the crimes that were committed. The problem that I have with the Epstein files is every single day, someone new here on South African X, if you go on South African X and you look at the progressives in South Africa, you would swear Donald Trump is in the Epstein files with photos of him with girls who are 13 years old on his island. Absolutely confirmed. 100% Donald Trump was caught red-handed having sex with underage people. That's according to South African X. He's already guilty. Then you go and you look, and the Epstein files is basically filled with a huge campaign to try and implicate Donald Trump in some crimes that were done, and then allegations that was brought against him in 2013 that was settled outside of court. Right? Actually, I don't even think it was settled. I think the girl who brought the charges or who made the allegations ultimately dropped the allegations against Donald Trump. So I don't even think it was settled outside of court. The girl just dropped the charges because I think things got very real very fast. But fundamentally, what a lot of people are just at this point saying is just do your job. The job of the Justice Department and of the government is to pursue justice against criminals. They should do their job, right? Instead of these papers that are now out there causing havoc all over the place, and no one knows what to believe, which just leads to a bunch of innocent people getting caught up in stuff that they shouldn't even be caught up in. Mornay Boerta would answer your question about the animals on his live streams. He doesn't mind to answer questions that was asked before. The fact that some people are using bots to try and promote their channels is just sad. It seems you need a long history to build that foundation. Liberal philosophy thinks morals can just be shared without foundation. Very true, Cesius. Very, very true. I have to get back to work. Hope you all have a great day. Rhodesian, take care of yourself, sir. Ask yourself, which global region is Christian-centric, God, family, country? Do yourself a favor and find out which global region countries push this first. Warasi, tell me, please. Everyone is talking about it. We need to guard ourselves against the likes of Epstein's all over the world. It's ongoing. Keep children safe and men keep women safe. I agree with you 100%. But I do believe the reason for the Epstein files and the reason things were allowed to go as long as they were is because we don't have governments that's serious about stopping crime. The other day I'm watching this ex-CIA spy talk about why they can't stop the cartels in Mexico. Why it's impossible to stop the cartels. And he says, well, the problem is if you take out one cartel member, it will just splinter into 100 new cartel members. And so it's best to just let these cartels exist because then you know who they are and you can sort of track what they do. And I thought to myself, imagine if you took that argument to anything else. Imagine if you went to the doctor and the doctor told you, well, you have cancer. And you say to the doctor, well, can we remove the cancer? And the doctor says, oh, no. You see, if we remove the cancer and we don't get all of it, it'll just spread all over. It's based that we know where the cancer is. But won't this kill me? Yeah. But we can keep an eye on it. So we can tell you exactly when you're going to die. But if we cut into it, it might get messy and then you'll just die. And it's like, wait, just cut it out. Like, if you miss some of it, don't miss some of it. But just get rid of it, please. I would rather take the chance of getting rid of it. The government's job is to stop crime. The government arguing that while we can't take out the cartels because it will just splinter into a million other cartels, then you take out those cartels as well, or better yet, don't miss. Take out the whole cartel and make it so expensive for those cartels that they ultimately just stop. But the argument that we're just not going to do anything about it because it's based that we know where these cartels are, that doesn't make sense to me. Your job is to enforce the law, not to allow criminals to exist because it happens to be a bit easier. In South Africa? Crazy Cat Lady, sorry. I read your message and I just immediately assumed that you're just a bot trying to promote some other channel. So I apologize for that, Crazy Cat Lady. I'm no bot. Someone asked about their animals in South Africa and if they do the refugee program. And I just mentioned that Mornay will answer that question for them on his live streams. I can just say the following. I know a couple of people who has animals who did apply for the refugee status. And from my understanding, provided that you can pay for your own animals, your animals are welcome to go. Right? But you must be able to pay for them. So the United States will pay for your ticket to go to America and for your family's tickets to go to America, but humans only. If you have animals, you have to pay for those yourself. And your baggage, as far as I know, is the same. You can take what's permitted in a normal flight. If you want extra, you have to pay for that. Attacking or defending Trump is like, who's attacking or defending Trump, though, Tekla? Make anyone else second guess their choice, as they say. Malcolm a voorbeeld. What do you think of China's population being around 500 million, choosing not to have kids because of child trafficking and the protests? So, Rivi, China's problems are much deeper. Now, I'm not sure if there's been any confirmed information about their population. Last I heard, it's estimated to be around 500 million people. Between 500 and 750, and not over a billion as they previously claimed. And this was as a result of, again, centralized command that made it so that, the provinces in China would get money based on the amount of children that were born. And so they were all sort of over reporting on the amount of children that were born every single year. And now they found out that, never mind. There's a lot less kids in China than what they actually thought. And so now they think the population is probably closer to like 500 to 750 million. That's the last I heard. I don't know if there's been confirmed numbers of this. My conversation with I wish I could remember his name. Oh, I think his real name is Marcus. Or Marcus. I think I can't remember his name on YouTube. That's the problem. But I met him on Saturday. I suck with names, just by the way, so please don't hate me. Names is my Everest. There's people at church that it took me months to remember the names. But I think his name is Marcus. He's lived in China for about 8 years, and he says the one child policy, this idea of just having one child, that's so ingrained in their culture. And you have to understand how marriage in China works in order to understand it. In the West, if I ask you, why would you get married? Anyone in chat right now? What are the reasons for you to get married? Just give me some ideas. Love. Start a family, have kids. Family is the main point. Debate. Do you have orientation in 3 days? Have kids? Well, I would argue most of you would agree it's love, right? That's the first one. It's love, right? You love this person. You want to spend the rest of your life with this person and you want to become a family. Maar, mag het wel lekker kos. You're gonna have to marry a wife that can actually cook. A woman doesn't just get married and suddenly just all of the recipes get downloaded into her head. Just to be clear, you can marry a really bad girl or a bad wife that just doesn't know how to cook. I mean, and also if you want her to always do the cooking, you have to be able to do the providing, right? If you can put the food on the table, she will probably turn that into a meal for you. But, just so that you understand. But okay, so it's love. Most of the time it's love that we want to become a family, we want to become together, and then we want to have kids. That's not how it works in China. In China, it is 100% a business proposal. For a man to get a wife, he has to have a car, he has to have a house, theoretically at least one. He can't have no house. She will not marry him if he doesn't have a house. Right? And he has to be able to provide, because the second they get married, the relationship goes as follows. I give you one child, I stop working, you provide for me for the rest of your life. That's my side of it. Your side, you give me a house, you give me a car, you give me a good life, and I give you one child, and I never work again. It has nothing to do with love. The Chinese women do not marry men for love. Culturally, the idea is my job is to give you one child. Your job is to take care of me and I'll raise this one child for you. So fundamentally, that is the biggest problem in China. The fabric has been destroyed so much, and children go through this entire government propaganda system from like the age of 4, that by the time they're finished, by the time they get to proper adult stage, every single kid believes this. This is how every single person thinks in China. This is why you're seeing so many Chinese women escape China and go to the West and marry Western men. These are the women who don't want this business relationship. Because for the men, this is also a perfect relationship. They have the one child. The child grows up with the mum, and he goes off and he sees brothels and sees prostitutes, and he goes out every night and get drunk, because as long as the money goes home, he can do whatever he wants, right? And it's also culturally a practice where the man gets a salary from the wife. So the man gets the salary, the main one, but that salary gets paid straight into the wife's account, and the wife then gives the man a salary that the man can spend on prostitutes and whatever. As long as he doesn't bother her, because she's busy raising his child and living the best life. That's the way it works in China. And that's just how it is, right? And I don't know how that changes culturally. I think the one-child policy has just destroyed China at this point. If a business transaction, trade-ins and upgrades is on the table, Japanese marriage is also a bit transactional. CCS, I think a lot of it has to do with Confucius teachings, which Japan and China are both victims of. But I think a lot of it has to do with this communal kind of thinking, right? This thinking of not the individual, but the group rather. And I think that's done a lot of harm. Yes, no nuclear family based in Judeo-Christian values. True. Doesn't even need to be official policy. Look at South Korea's demographic collapse. Blade, I wonder sometimes how much of it is just a result of, because a lot of the reason why communism works so well in China is Confucius sort of philosophy, right? A lot of Confucianism is built upon this idea of collectivism anyways. And if you look at the countries who were most influenced by Confucianism, it is South Korea, Japan, China, right? Those are the countries that had the greatest influence on Confucianism, or at least offshoots of Confucianism. So even if it wasn't Confucianism officially, the the sort of influence of that was throughout that entire region. And it's funny how in all of those regions you are seeing a complete collapse in birth rates, complete collapse in traditional family values. And what's funny is that it's not traditional values that have collapsed. Right? That's insane to me. So, for example, South Korean women are a lot more conservative than most Western conservative women. Sex before at least love is a complete no-no in South Korea. Like, they will not sleep with a guy unless they're in love with the guy. And a lot of women, even if they're not Christian, will wait until marriage. It's cultural. They don't sleep around. They don't act promiscuously. And yet, for some reason, this traditional family or traditional value society that are, in most cases, very conservative, the family value thing has never actually sort of translated. They don't have that family value idea. And I can't tell you why. I genuinely don't know why. I don't know enough about Asian societies, to be fair. What I do know is basically hearsay. It's other people that I hear speaking about it. Nobody speaks Chinese, Mandarin, or Cantonese. Yeah, but Chinese people just call it Chinese because at least I don't know the difference between. If I see a person, there's no way I'm gonna know whether or not they're speaking Mandarin or Cantonese. I'm just gonna know. Oh, this sounds like Chinese. Watch Serpent ZA to really understand how crap China is. He lived there for 14 years. He is a South African living in the US. I know who Serpent ZA is. Yeah. I like him. I was learning a bit about China, and I'm done saying it's all wrong and bad and whatnot. Their civilization is just vastly different. I still don't like their government, but which one do I like? None. Tekla, the thing for me is, I draw a very stark difference or distinction between the people of China and the CCP. I hate the CCP. I despise the Communist Party. I love Chinese people. Like, I will be honest with you. Every single time I go to the Chinese shop, right? Because there's a Chinese supermarket not far from me. Every single time I go there, I love having conversations with the Chinese lady there. My Chinese takeout close to my house here, I love the Chinese dude because we have these conversations and it's interesting. It's fun talking. They're always super friendly and nice. They're just the nicest people you'll ever meet. So I have no problem with Chinese people whatsoever. The CCP is my biggest problem. Two distinct claves of Soviet-descended communism, but they're both still communism. Blade, very, very true. I would argue that the problem for us here in South Africa is that the ANC is still part of the Cold War era communist movement. Their version of communism is the one that killed over 100 million people. Right? They're still stuck in that sort of Stalin, Lenin, or Leninist, Trotskyist version of communism. Rather, I would say the DA is probably more closely aligned with the Chinese version of communism. And I don't mean to call the DA communists. That's not the point. But the DA are a bit more corporatist. They're a bit more sort of WEF corporatist ideals. And so they're more aligned with what the CCP is doing. If only the ANC was looking at the CCP, because even the CCP has told the ANC, you guys should probably relax on this whole BE thing a little. It's a bit much, right? So, yeah, I don't know. It's insane. Go up when the state provides free healthcare and pays for second child. It worked in Russia. Lana's not really. The Chinese have tried everything. Birth rates did not go up. Birth rates is a result of culture, not a result of something that government is doing, because the birth rates will only go up for a short period of time until the government is forced to raise taxes to pay for all of these children and the free healthcare, the free childcare and the free healthcare. Once those taxes go up, it will once again become almost impossible for people to have a second child. And so people will go right back to having just one child. And then you'll have to raise the taxes again to get people to have another child. So it is a very short-term solution. The longer-term reason why people aren't having kids is cultural. You have a cultural problem in your society that you need to fix. And a lot of that stems from the idea that we raise people today not understanding. And I know, because this was me 2.5 years ago. I came out of a house where I was taught, don't get married too soon. First, enjoy your life. Go build a life for yourself. Go out and live your life. There's plenty of time to get married. You can get married. These days, people get married when they're 35, 36. And then you turn 41 and you're still not married. And what good did that do you? Right? You just got involved in a lot of things that you would not have gotten involved in if you did get married. You wasted a big chunk of your life. Your peers have children. Your peers have families. And you can see visibly that they are far happier than what you are. Their lives are far better than what yours is. Because fundamentally, that's what we were made to do. We were not made to be alone. We were designed to get married. We were designed to have children. That is our great commission. It's what we were made for. So the government can't stimulate that. You need people to get back to the realization that marriage is important. Experience your life together with your family. Michael, true. People have more children looking at other people with many children. I would argue, well, there might be maybe there's some truth to that. Birth rates are a secondary issue. White people are not valueless widgets like the Chinese. We need to foster a healthy environment for us. Good things come later. The tasteful thickness, I think you need a two-pronged approach, as I've said before. You need the government to enforce the rule of law and to create an environment where people can grow and where people can realize their economic dreams insofar as they're able to work for it. And then you need to enable the church to actually change society. The government can't get involved in moral issues. That the government is a secular entity. It should not involve itself in moral issues. It should involve itself in matters of justice and righteousness and order. And the church needs to involve itself in the moral side and the moral fabric. I think if you do that, you could probably fix any country. All countries in the world can be fixed in that way. South Africa doesn't have borders, and a lot of people are saying the population in South Africa is 123 million. Do you think the DA can fix this? Ravi, I highly doubt that we have 123 million people living in South Africa. Being asked if I just think that that South Africa can fix, yes, of course. The question again is, how much will people be willing to stomach? Because it's not going to be pretty. This is one of the things that annoys me when I see conservatives turn against Donald Trump saying, yeah, we did want the illegals out of here, but not like this. And then it's like, how did you think that was going to go? Did you imagine that Donald Trump was just going to ask the immigrants nicely to get out and they were going to leave? This was always going to get messy. The immigrant criminals were always going to want to stay. And so they were going to clash with ICE. The left was always going to become criminal about it. This was always going to be ugly. So the question is, how much ugliness is South Africans willing to stomach? But can the police solve the immigration problem in South Africa? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would actually argue it's easier in South Africa than what it is in America. Because South Africa doesn't have nearly as many places where our immigrants hide out. We have about 3 cities where the vast majority of immigrants live. And if you literally just cleared out Cape Town, Johannesburg, and KwaZulu-Natal, you would already get rid of about 60% of all of the immigrants in this country. And those are just 3 cities, right, that you have to take care of. Did ask them nicely. He then gives them $1,000 to self-deport and come back legally, but not all of them wanted to do that. Stained, yeah, but my point was not everyone. The criminal illegals were not going to leave voluntarily, right? Because they have criminal networks that they're protecting there. So my point was the immigrants that are there that refuse to self-deport, they're not going to go quietly, right? And so there's always going to be, you have to accept as a society, sometimes enforcing the law is ugly. And you have to accept that. The government was given the express permission to do the ugly work so that we as citizens don't have to do it. Friedrich Nietzsche's quote, how much truth can a spirit bear? How much truth can a spirit dare? Turning Point, how are you doing, sir? No, that's a very good quote. What will happen to the brown colored people? Daniel, as far as I know, refugee status is available to them as well. If I'm not mistaken, there are colored people right now that are going into America as refugees. It's literally happening as we speak. People incorrectly believe that the refugee program is just for white people. It very clearly states minorities. It prioritizes Afrikaners. And in that, people who speak Afrikaans. So that automatically includes white and brown people, right? Because most coloreds speak Afrikaans, right? But then also racial minorities like Indians, like colored people, like Asians even, that live here. They're all part of the refugee program. It's not just white people that's part of it. There are already colored people that went to the USA on the refugee program. Yeah. So, I'm assuming a lot of colored people will probably take up Donald Trump's offer for refugee status. And I think those who stay will have the same problems they had during apartheid. In apartheid, they were not white enough, and now they're not black enough. So it's just going to be, same problems. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss kind of situation. It is what it is. But okay, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to go watch the Super Bowl now. This has been fun. I will be back tomorrow, same time. We'll probably start also at around 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'll again share it. We'll probably go longer tomorrow. I have a couple of videos that I want to react to with all of you. But now I'm going to go watch the Super Bowl. Thank you so much to all of you for not spoiling the score. I truly appreciate that. Because I'm really looking forward to watching the Super Bowl. Patriots, let's go. Let's go, New England. I'm so excited. It's not my actual team, just FYI, but my actual team sucked. The Cowboys crumbled like a crouton this year. So, gonna be watching my third favorite team, which is the New England Patriots. The Buccaneers is my second favorite team. But hey, we'll hopefully the Patriots manage to get this through. I want to give a massive shout out to everyone that donated money, to everyone that is supporting this channel financially. I truly appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. Please be good to each other, be kind to each other. Take care of yourselves, guys. Have a wonderful evening. And I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.